Hello and welcome back to the Timeline Astrology podcast. Today I am welcoming back Kishori. Kishori has been with me before on this podcast and we talked all about the Song of Rahu, her epic poem. And we decided to go and do a whole series on Rahu. We're calling it Maps of Consciousness. And we're going to look at Rahu in each of the 12 houses of astrology, each of the 12 areas of life. How we can break that down and look at this beast and try and tame the beast in segments. So today's podcast is all about Rahu in the first house of self, and what that might mean from an astrological point of view and from Kishori's unique perspective, and opening our minds as astrologers or those interested in the astrology point of view, and giving us a different perspective really on Rahu, which you might not have heard of before. Let's jump straight in, shall we? We had thought about approaching this with sort of a framework of Rahu, and me with my astrologer's hat on. How do I approach this? And the best way I could think of was to look at each house of the zodiac. And the house is basically just an area of our life where we experience something, whatever it might be. So the first house, we can start there with Rahu.
It's jolly useful to have some kind of framework because, as we've seen before, Rahu is huge and it's a huge energy when you take the lid off. And so some sort of way of looking at the whole animal.
It's like dissecting the animal.
Yes.
So what's interesting though is that the first house of the zodiac is, in a way, dissecting the animal, maybe taking its head off and looking at the head and the intelligence.
Yes.
But the first house is also the beginning of the whole chart. So it kind of shows the overall person anyway. So when Rahu is in the first house, either by transit or in the birth chart, it does often show the overall kind of personality is kind of infused with Rahu. So maybe we could talk about that.
Yeah.
What does it even mean to say that someone's personality or character is infused with Rahu?
Absolutely. Well, as I've said before, there is only one consciousness. However, it has multiple, almost infinite, I don't know whether infinite, filters, layers. So you put on a pink or a red filter or a blue. And so looking at somebody who has Rahu in the first house, obviously they have many other filters, and it's all modified by all the other planetary deities or planetary filters, if you like. So when we talk about one aspect, one filter, obviously it's going to be very broad brush, and you with your skill, when you talk to an individual, are going to take into account all the multiple filters. I sometimes think it's like you're on a stage and there's all the spotlights and they're all pink and blue and green and different, and they give a different flavor, or a meal where you've got a little flavor of this spice or that. So yeah, we will address, as you say, in this first house, and it can look as if it is a very self-absorbed state, as you said at the beginning, but it's also the truth as well behind that. The absolute truth is the way I see Rahu. It's a doorway to God, to the divine. I don't like to use the word God very much, but the absolute state. Anyway, I'm really excited to be with you again and to see what magic we can conjure up to enable our minds to be at peace with it all, and to get the best, to experience the best of Rahu, like the lid being taken off of a capped oil well or a champagne bottle or whatever you call it.
That sounds great. That's a great analogy as well of like how we're all just like a kaleidoscope of colors.
Yes.
When we're looking at ourselves. But
yes.
Rahu, let's face it, can distort. Because as you always say, you say it's either impossible or it's easy. It's just never like in between. It's like extreme, right, Rahu? So sometimes it could be like an extreme block that somebody has about seeing themselves, their true selves, right? And then all of a sudden it could blow wide open.
Absolutely, it can. It's like ripping off the veils, or the making a hole in the dam, and bingo, it all spills out. But it's the distortion. My sense is, as that lid is taken off, is the mixture of the turbulence as something that has been held back, or has been waiting, if you like. Not, but you can't say it's waiting. It's like that. And when the period or the filter of Rahu begins to get intense, and in some people it gets very intense, then it can be very turbulent. And the more we hold on, the more we attempt to push that lid back, or that finger back in the dam, the more difficulty we have in allowing what has been suppressed, repressed, including the precious unknown, because I don't see it's not all bad what emerges. It's the unknown, not just the suppressed, the repressed, the shadow, but there's so much comes out. And when we open the heart, when we rest in the heart, when we address anything, when we are forced to address something challenging in our life, if we address it from the heart field and just say, okay, this is more than I can manage, and we surrender to being in the heart field, it will resolve it. It will bring the state that you need, you require, in which to address these, whatever issues may be facing you. And it can then be, quite beautiful.
Is it possible at all to reach that state without having initially had that block? Because I'm just thinking here of how so many times in my own life, and obviously with clients' charts, with astrology, you're looking at the block always, because they're coming with the block.
Exactly. This is absolutely, you hit the nail on the head. When we practice, maybe well in advance of a challenge or a Rahu experience, resting in the heart field. And resting in the heart field is simply bringing your attention to that frequency. And it can be, that's really all that I play with. Well, obviously, it looks like more when it comes out, because it's like the Tower of Babel. But when you go to the heart field, there's a sense of automatic order, or automatic release, an automatic surrender to the self-organizing principle that when we go up in our head and contract, it's not available. Hey, you remember I spoke to you once before about Incy Wincy Spider? I love fairy tales, because when you are moving up, when Incy Wincy Spider is moving up the rainpipe, he's expanding, opening, relaxing, sun is there, etc. Because of his state that he has chosen, right? That of expansion. When the raindrop might come and he goes down the rainpipe, there's falling into a contracted state. And I see it's a bit like birth pangs. If we tighten up in the process of those pulsations, rather than calling them contractions, the pulsations of birth, and we surrender to that, then it can become ecstatic. Many women have expressed that birth, instead of being painful or violent, can be really orgasmic. Now, when it takes some practice, and I'm not saying I'm a master at it, but I have experienced that, and I've experienced the circumstances, which is all, anything around you in your life, your immediate friends' circumstances, the world circumstances, even, which we're going through at the moment. And when we are in the heart field, when we bring our attention to root in there is an enormous relaxation. And it's really helpful to begin to practice. Anyone listening, practice it now. Hand on heart and listen. And just feel and listen. And then you I sometimes used to hear, or still hear, the other part of me. There's the part of me which is, let's say, ordinary Jeanette in her mind and And then there's Jeanette, or we call her Kishori, in the heart field, dancing and singing and free, opening to the more. And the more has to always be something more beautiful, more, even though it may look, when we're clearing out the basement of an old house that we're restoring, perhaps, which we are all engaged in, restoring these old houses, these bodies. And even when they, let's say, there's damp rot, dry rot, worse, and we open to that and we can then receive information, knowledge, love, if you like, the sensation of being supported, cared for, which the little creature requires. The little creature always requires. And in whatever state, you can open to that. So, it's Cincy Wincy Spider. It's opening and closing, and it's being available to the more. And seeing that fear, for example, of which Rahu is he brings a lot of that, or he seems to, and that fear is perceived to be a sensation in the body. When you really are practiced, you will know this very well, when you are practiced at going to the heart with your attention, resting in the heart field, you know that answers or resolutions, if you like, not even answers, resolutions can happen just like that. So it makes sense to be ready to take the lid of the champagne bottle. It makes sense to be ready with a container if you take the lid off the oil well, if you take the cap off the oil well, or any other situation. So when you want to confront, when you know you are in a state that you have to confront someone or something and deal with it, and because it feels scary, we don't deal with it. We procrastinate, and the rubbish mounts up, the dry rot, the damp rot, and it's worse. However, if you practice on a regular basis, rooting your mind in the heart field, letting go, at lots of moments, tiny moments, joyful moments, practice it, you have the neural pathways are used to it. You train them. That the moment you have the possibility of an accident or a big meltdown with someone, or you prepare. And how do you prepare? Not by making all your notes and lists and things, not your to-do list, although you might do that as well, but you prepare. What is real preparation? Is practicing the state of being in union, in yoga, with your absolute self, with the self that takes care of everything, the self which sorts, the self that is keeping the planets going around the sun, the self which is, and we can, because we are a microcosm of that.
It makes me wonder, because it always feels like again, I guess this extreme of contraction, and like the way you describe it as a pulsation more so, because in my own life as well, I feel like I've managed it so well that it's almost become like this pulsation all the time, where it's never too extreme, like contraction, but therefore I don't know if it's then never then the opposite, like release of the cork in the champagne bottle. It never kind of feels that extreme. Do you think there's benefit to kind of being extremely contracted and then that release, or is it the same?
It's beyond the possibility of judgment, Everyone has a different flavor. So there may be people who are able to accept that gentle ripples. But I bet you in your life, you will have had moments where,
oh, I have many, but it just seems like I'm with, my awareness of it and been practiced, I guess. In other words, I don't feel like I've gone mad. And if I didn't have those practices, I feel like I could have easily gone mad in my life, crazy with everything that's happened.
It's possible. Yes, it's true.
So it's kind of like, isn't that the danger though, that because of the extreme nature of it, that it could literally block off all of life and self and forevermore, or it could completely release it, like completely. Whereas sometimes I feel like I'm in this modern, or in this kind of like middle state of like these pulsations that are manageable, but it's never like huge. It's never huge releases.
In the Song of Rahu, which we've spoken about before, the epic poem that was given to me, it says, "Do not scurry to one pole, my children, as if afraid of the dark. Sit rather in the middle of the house. Understand and love the mystery of my dark secret ways." So you are sitting, practicing in being in the middle of the house, which is beautiful. You don't have to go to the chaotic tsunami storms. And if you do, if they do rise, because each of us is processing, well, whatever it is we've inherited in these bodies that hasn't yet been digested from our ancestors or whatever state that's in the unconscious. So sitting in the middle of the house enables you to be in that part of the ocean of samskara that is simple to navigate. If you don't have some movement, then you sit in the shallows forever. Some movement, some pressure, some what people might call stress, some little, I mean, you have to put some effort, but it doesn't have to be a massive operation. You see? So all I'm saying is that having a practice of some kind that pleases you, it doesn't have to be that strict, and you can also find ways of modifying that practice now and again. So the day when there's real pressure, lots to do, you might do 5 minutes. You might spend 5 minutes or 2 minutes or even 1 minute reminding yourself of that state of equanimity, of equilibrium. What we need is equilibrium. We are constantly in that little boat on this ocean of experience.
So I feel sometimes that I deliberately, like I'm consciously making the decision to, I think I was telling you this before, like to procrastinate, just so that I will have to rush last minute to give myself that kind of pressure and stress to then to be released from it. You know what I mean?
I know, I understand. I mean, it really is this, just like building to an orgasm. You don't just go, oh, quick, finish, done. It's like playing with it tantrically, and then also knowing the way to relax in the midst of pressure.
So this brings me to think then about going back to this notion of having Rahu in the first house in astrology, which basically somebody could be described as more like a Rahu type of person, whatever that means, right? Because it's very many shades, right? Obviously, right? But like I've seen all the very many shades of this, and it does also seem that the person themselves, because this is how it's said astrologically, that when Rahu rises in the chart, that the person takes on so many different roles in life. They wear so many different hats that they almost get a sense of loss of, that's the contraction, like they don't really know themselves, quote unquote selves, right? But like you're talking about the true self beyond all of that, which they have access to, but it's maybe that they get so wrapped up in all the little selves.
True. So looking at it as well, you can look at it as a merry-go-round. You sit in that space in the middle, and then you have all of your wild horses around you, and or tame horses or whatever, and you choose, but you live them, however wild they might seem, from that place of being sovereign, being the silent witness or owner of your house. The heart is the only owner. The heart field, it's the, you know. And then you don't identify with one tiny little thing, like a cut finger or a lost key or, even an accident, but also living from that silence center, that stillness, the center, the eye of the storm, living from there enables you to do what you're saying. You get gentle waves instead of violent ones. And when the violent ones comes, you can be like Christ in the storm, calm, and you have the capacity to be sovereign.
Like, to your point about like the contractions, and it can be like you can be in the center of the house and be more like pulsation, that speaking for too long about these things is like this dance between it. Like, it seems like when I listen to you, I'm constantly like contracting and releasing, and that itself, it's like you're giving birth. It's like, it's tiring, so it's like you can only take so much of that kind of contraction and release. And even though it's amazing, it's like you say, it's like you need it, it's just in bite-size pieces. I'm thinking in terms of Rahu. This is the other thing, when I think astrologically, what all of the labels that it's given, like one label it's certainly not given is moderate. Like it's like excess. So if it was very prominent in somebody, like they tend to ask a lot of themselves. They ask a lot of life and expect a lot of life. And one of the other things is, on the tail end of that, what seems to happen a lot when I see it in charts anyway, that somebody could feel like imposter syndrome, where they always feel inadequate, like they're not enough.
Exactly. So we have to be aware that what we are is pure consciousness, or we have to, even if it's a tiny little spark. I talk about the heart star in here, and connecting to that point of light in the heart frequency that you can train yourself to rest in. And so if we do that, then we can we can negotiate, if you like. I once negotiated with one beautiful client, but she had so much emotion repressed and controlled, and that she wouldn't want to cry in front of anybody, or anybody to see any of it. So I said, look, I will show you how, and you will make a bargain with your being that you will allow it periodically, a little bit at a time, every day, and you will not cry in public until that doesn't matter to you anymore. You understand? So, and that worked for some years for her. And then she came to a point of being a master of the whole thing of therapy, But she was very, very held. So it's a question of becoming familiar of the interaction of your let's call it the unmodified self, and your basic personality. I'm just remembering a little incident with my son, who has Mars ascendant. I'm thinking of Hanuman, and it's very powerful. He's very strong, right? So when I used to live in a house with a gas cooker for the wood burner, and he changed it. He was only a teenager then. He wasn't taking care, and there's a lot of energy, and in adolescence as well, about and the whole thing exploded in my face with and I burnt off my eyelashes, and could have blinded me, right? So, but as he became mature, he is awesome, and the real beautiful qualities of Mars, that Hanuman devotion, evolved in him beautifully. That takes time. It takes dedication. It takes lots of little surrenders, lots of little investigations. And everyone, especially listeners who are playing with maps of consciousness, like astrology or other things, they're aware. And the thing that is very difficult is to sit in judgment, in contraction, in in disregard of the little creature and judge, because you are also always the all-loving, the all-wise, the all that you switch on a lot more when you're dealing with a client or when you're addressing a child or whatever. There are situations, and we all know that dichotomy. So that's what things like the maps of consciousness that you know so well, that everybody listening must know, are so useful for, because you have to find the way to set up that you have access to your wisdom, to your silence, to your peace at any time. It's almost like a child. I see sometimes a picture of a child in the garden, baby, little one, encountering a snail for the first time and looking back at its mum in the kitchen window going, oh, in horror, because doesn't know what this is, this creature. Runs for home. So we have to find a way of running for home, which would be really wonderful to practice in current turbulent times. Is to be able to let your mind run for home rather than explode into terror, which is totally possible. So do not scurry to one pole, my children, as if afraid of the dark. The dark being, a doorway to Rahu, being Rahu. Sit rather in the middle of the house, but you've got to find that space. What does it mean, the middle of the house? What does it mean being at home in your body, in your mind, in your heart? What does it mean? And it's not what it means, because if you know what it means, you're in your head still. You have to know what it feels like. Those waves of, as you know, when you've put the last little dot on your piece of writing that you had to do, and you've left till the last minute, and it's 2 minutes to your presentation, and that feeling of the relief, and it's a game, and we self-train.
It's a game, and I also feel like, is it not like, well, I don't know, you can tell me, is it easier to remain in the middle of the house when it's not so turbulent outside and you can be practiced in that? Because oftentimes I feel like in my life I've because I've done all the yoga meditation retreats practices over years and years and years, but I would also then always leave them in that environment and go back into the real world, quote unquote, and then just be lost in chaos again and not have any kind of, there was a cumulative kind of effect of that practice over many years. But sometimes I feel like until there was a point in my life, and it just so happened to be Rahu Ketu cycle, by the way, the opposite to Rahu, where I just kind of thought, okay, I just have to be okay and still in this chaos.
That's absolutely right. What's coming to mind? Do you remember? There's a story, a little Vedic story. This yogi had been meditating for I don't know how many years in a cave up in the Himalaya. And one day he woke up and he said, I'm done, that's it. And he goes down the mountain to the village and he meets a woman, probably a prostitute, on the well. And he goes, because he's not had the chance to go in and out, the dipping and dyeing process. When you're dyeing cloth and you're doing it the old-fashioned way, you dip it, you dry it, you dip it, you take it out, and you dry it. You go in and out. You have to get to the point where you are in the midst of circumstances. You are able to be your full spectrum self in the center, in your silence, and functioning as one of the horses on the roundabout going up and down as well. So you can be in any part of your full spectrum life. In fact, we do really move through all the parts, as Shakespeare says, and one man in his time plays many parts. We are all supposed to play, or intended, not supposed, we all intend as beings to be comfortable in any aspect, in any part, from being at home with our children, to out giving a public performance, to I don't know, climbing a mountain, whatever it is, or some way of expressing each of the different ways of engaging with this world. And being a householder in the Vedic teaching is kind of less than being a great guru. But some of the greatest astrologer gurus have been both, you know?
Mm. That makes so much sense. Like, I mean, I actually can pinpoint it in my own life to one specific event where I felt like I had reached the sort of center, and it was sitting with this lady who was in absolute turmoil and control, like crying uncontrollably. And I, in that moment, for some reason, was just sent into this stillness in myself. And I previously to that probably would have thought, okay, that's actually not a good state to be in. If somebody's crying in front of you, you want to like cry with them and you'll be there with them. But at that moment, I realized actually that I was actually more fully with her by being in that stillness.
Absolutely. Perfect. See, the thing is, you, and so does everybody else, already know it. And one of the things which I suppose I do or happens is that I like Osho was, a finger pointing at the moon. I say, yeah, that's exactly right. And by being in that state, what you did with that woman is draw her, even only a tiny little speck, into her own simplicity, the ease, the place with it's easy. It is not possible to shift state from distraught crying unless you find neutral. It's not possible to shift gears in an old gear car without going through neutral. So it's either simple, you go to neutral in a car, easy to change gear, not possible. You know what it's like when your clutch goes? Well, I have an automatic now, but it's impossible. And you kind of struggle limping home with the car because you can't change gear. Mm. And that's what it's like with us. So one of the reasons for practice, whichever practice you choose that you love, and it must be something you love and not something you're doing out of duty, you know, not that harsh discipline. It's got to be discipled to the heart. It's a love affair. And when that is really clear, you gradually slip into the state where you can access it at will, but you become it. You recognize, you realize, and it's so lovely to be in love in your true state that you don't ever want to leave it, but you don't have to. You can still play all the parts from that place. So cultivating your true identity is through self-inquiry in whatever way you choose, whichever tool you used to inquire. In the end, it's only the heart, and it shows you it all, with or without your map. You know. Mm. You know.
I'm wondering, should I bring up another topic? Yeah. It's not another topic; it's the same topic, but it's this notion that you might have heard of this sense of we're in the dawn of the age of Aquarius.
Yes,
all of that, right? But in astrology, Rahu rules Aquarius, which is interesting because I've heard you speak before about how we're at the dawn of a new era, or where I don't know how you would put it, but like from an astrological point of view, this sense of dawning of Aquarius is this sense of dealing with all this dichotomy. It's like it's so paradoxical. Aquarius, it's the most unusual sign of the zodiac for obvious reasons because of Rahu, right? And there's always this and that. So on the one hand, it's all about individuality and freedom, but then on the other hand, it's all about community and equality, right? So it's all these kind of this and that with Aquarius. Do you sense that we're heading into that kind of era? Like people are waking up more and more, like people say.
My sense is that the word choice is really, really fundamental here, because all of the options are being presented, or bundles of, just all over the place. And you can choose where to explore it all from. And then the choices become choiceless. It becomes obvious what you in union, your mind in union with your heart wants. Like, I'm in the middle at the moment. Am I looking to settle and buy a new little house in England, or am I off to India to live my son's farm, and they are all expressions of different states within me. And it means that the freedom, or the desire for freedom, to be an individual, to have no restraints at all, and the desire to be settled and be in harmony, to live in harmony with beings, with family, with community. They are like, they are the integration of these apparently opposite states. I always say that living in community has to enable more freedom, not less. So we have to look at the pairs of opposites, or the disparate choices we seem to have, and find the place within, because as above, so below, as within, so without. When you reach that place of being able to recognize that I can go to the heart in my attention and find the bigger picture, where integration is natural, and the yogic flowers and fruit naturally blossom from that place. So there's no struggle. So it's effortless, choiceless, or rather, the choice for that balance and that harmony has already been made. If you keep going back to that place, your mind will settle and the whole situation will resolve. Has to, because that's what we're here for.
I guess it's the kind of the impish part of me that keeps coming up with, but this, but that,
I love those yes buts. It's my favorite. I love
in my head anyway. I don't always voice them all, because sometimes actually the yes buts are kind of like a bit inappropriate in the moment. But one of the big buts is like this whole sense of Rahu being the complete and utter narcissist. It's like completely contracted state where it's like only about me, and there's no connection to anything or anyone else. And that's how it's described in astrology. Like, it's narcissistic, it's self-absorbed. And I know on the other hand that that's not true, because that is actually pointing to a disconnect. So they're looking for some connection, but there's kind of like, they're like, again, it feels like a very contracted state.
Yes. It's the error of the mind. I wish I knew what that was in Sanskrit. I remember Andrew telling me once.
I know what
you find that the whatever it is.
The heart. Is it prab? No.
Yeah, something with prab.
Yeah.
But anyway, you find it for me.
I'll look it up.
Look it up and tell me. I've been looking for it for years. Anyway, because I'd forgotten. Anyway, no, it's only that error. Oh, do you know what? It's gone. What were we asking?
I'm talking about like maybe that sense of being like completely enveloped in yourself.
Yeah. Okay. So the truth is, there is one consciousness. Let's say, and all the little filters of the various expressions, like the lenses of a fly's eye, for example. And so ultimately, the absolute truth is there is only one. So there is only me. There's only what I see, what I choose to see, and how I choose to see it through my lens. So the error is in judging, because when you actually make your choices to see only the one, only the little bit of blue sky, if you like. It does sound so simplistic, but when you choose to see in every other that little heart star, the radiance of who they are, what happens is the whole thing reconfigures, and you can play that game by. I remember there's a game I used to teach some of my clients years ago. Just walk around the supermarket. Everybody's all in, self-absorbed. And now you see on the other side a child crying. You stop, go to your heart, and send out your little ET finger, Ray, and the child will stop crying and look at you. And you can play a game of giving them a hug or a look or a sweet or whatever it is you want. And you will, 9 times out of 10, when you practice that child will stop. And it's a little way of experimenting, but that's only one little game. There are many little games. And
I remember using a practice of, like, if I was ever sitting in a waiting room around people, I would just do this kind of visualization where I would be sending out this white light.
Yeah.
And you'd actually see people turn around, almost like just look at you.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So if someone is appears to be totally self-absorbed, then it's a state that they are going through. And if they are shown or somehow find the heart frequency that is actually looking through that lens, then they see themselves everywhere. Was it Rumi said, one look from you and I see you in all things, or maybe it was Kabir, I don't know. One look from you and I see you in all things, looking back at me, those eyes in which all things live and burn. So resting, finding your true identity is a game we can play very well in a householder, in a modern world. Just, and probably more for these years now, as you're talking about Aquarius, rather than sitting in a cave. We've gone beyond that time.
Right, because like, look, here we are speaking online, like on the computer, and just by you bringing this, just by you voicing this, I'm in more of that. I just feel like I'm settling into that state, and I'm open.
Yes. It's pure Advaita Vedanta, absolutely. Right in the middle of playing the game in this playground. If you call the world a playground, our garden that we're gardening, or our playground, it's like a playground, it's a fairground, like, Vanity Fair. It's all how you choose to see and feel it. And so some little practice, when you are not at the mercy of circumstances and spinning all over the place, when you are able to practice, and then from that state, take it into the world, practice. Sitting in a waiting room is an ideal place to practice. I would say driving your car, if it didn't sound as if I was telling people not to keep their eyes on the road, so I won't say that. But yes, traffic lights, or moments when you are made to physically still the body. Those 5 minutes before you fall asleep, or an hour if you're not able to sleep, you suffer from insomnia. Those are perfect moments to practice the simplicity, little breathing, a little bit of having compassion on your body self, the self that doesn't know, the little bits of you that don't remember, the little bits where the mind does slip into the old paradigm, the old way, or the habitual way. Because especially in a period like Rahu, but all the time, things will surface. Memories, experiences of being terrified, experiences of being powerless. We are here to bring ourselves into complete expression through all the states of bringing calm to the storm and living as full spectrum embodiment. This is the game now. These bodies, these little lives that we've carved out so far are waiting for the great architecture, engineer, whatever you call it, that one in form, and form is also mind and intention and all of that, not just body, but to create order, beauty, love, and fulfill the heart desire. We have so many desires. Mostly we'll think, oh, that's unimportant. So strict discipline will say, no, never eat ice cream. Don't do anything like that. Don't just be a monk or
we have to get into that next time we talk, because next time we're going to talk about Rahu in the second house.
Yeah.
Right, and all about food.
Do you know what? I was going to write to you about that, because food, or not just food, but nourishment
and sustenance, and
yes,
what's sustaining you.
Yeah, well, you can touch on it now if you want to. We don't have to wait.
Oh yeah, I'd love to, but then we're going to go down a whole other rabbit hole with that. And I just wanted, maybe, because I'm conscious of time now, and we're going to have to.
I want to do that. Let's do that next time.
Yeah, let's do it next time.
Authentic nourishment is one of my favorite themes. Playing with turning up and down the dimmer switch, if you like. on food. What is food? How do we engage? And I really want to do that.
I really want that as well, because that would personally I benefit from that a lot as well, because I have Rahu in the second house in my birth chart. So I have obviously
I was going to ask you,
like when I was younger, I would have such like an atrocious diet. Like I wouldn't eat anything from my parents. I would just eat sweets, like save up all my money and buy sweets, and then I wouldn't eat anything, no dinner or anything. It was like atrocious. And now I've swung the other opposite way, like a complete health freak. But anyway, I want to ask one more thing before we leave it. Because I was talking about Aquarius. Do you think that it's therefore going to become more extreme? Life is, it seems, becoming more extreme in both ways. So it's like technology, everything is just ramping everything up, and it's like everyone's more lost in many ways. But then at the same time, there's many people being found or finding themselves. Would you say that's the case?
Yes. But ultimately, of course, everyone, every being, and everyone here is potentially a being, and not a robot, and has the power of choosing. And it may look like everyone's like becoming more robotic and or like lemmings, but not everyone, but some people. But it's ultimately a state. And honestly, the best thing anyone could do is train yourself to find that point from which you can observe what's happening and make your choice. But yes, polarization is what's happening. You remember Jung spoke a lot about. I love Jung. He was one of my early inner mentors, still around now. But he's talking about the union of opposites, and we know in alchemy as well, it's that union of the opposites produces a huge power. It will cause turbulence and all sorts of other things. And the way that you manage it is simply by moving your attention to a different frequency, a vaster frequency. But yes, there is a lot of polarization going on. I saw years ago that it would be like the whole earth, and there was some new age talk of polarization, creating of two earths. I remember looking at that. When I was first running a center, people would come and bring me. It was the time when they were talking about spaceships and Sananda in the sky and all sorts of stuff, the explosion of 11/11 and all of that. Anyway, so they would come and ask me, and I would just be able to see that there was always a spark of truth in every situation. I just had to put my attention on it and train people to put their attention on that. And that union of opposites, I can remember when I was young, I was brought up Catholic, I think I told you, and I wanted to do things. I really wanted to go into a convent because that was where Jesus was it, family life was difficult. But I also had this raging desire to explore boys and have lovers. And so I would swing between, oh, no, I'm going to a Carmelite convent. Oh, I'm going to... It came to the final resolution of that, where I was, they're the same thing. They're exactly the same thing, same frequency. And I really integrated that big time. And, that ecstatic experience you have, the longing for that union is there. You can read St. John of the Cross, one of the mystics, which I won't go into now, otherwise we'll use up all the time. But yeah, it is polarizing, but it's not wrong.
But it's not wrong.
It's not wrong. Nothing's wrong. It's all on track. And the pulsations can be great dynamic waves in this ocean, or it can be little trickles. And who is to say which is more ecstatic? Everybody has their own lens through which they experience this playground, what they want to play with. When we learn to totally follow our heart, all desires are satisfied. They have to be satisfied. I remember once hearing from within, many years ago, don't be concerned. All desires are an energy gone out from source, which has to return to source for completion. So this desire or something much better will always be satisfied, has to be. in the general, in the order of what is reality, has to be. So you can relax.
That is Rahu in a nutshell, really, because like that is it. It's like the desire for fulfillment and the dissatisfaction when it's just purely going out and not returning to source. And it's like that kind of divine dissatisfaction almost driving you there.
And you can see it in Rahu Ketu in that axis. You've got the absolute dynamic.
Like the snake eating its own tail.
Yes, well, the Uranus is the beginning, but we can't stay with this in that state. If you do stay in that, say, in that Uraboric state, to say a child at the mother's breast, totally at peace, mother that's completely loving, and you think of the ideal divine mother. If you stay like that, that child will never grow. In the Rahu, Song of Rahu, which is being published very soon, it talks about, and Rahu is a poisonous snake, feeding at the breast of the mother. She nourishes and treasures him, the changeling child, the malformed, the experience of difference. She nourishes and treasures him. I mean, that's pretty radical. And those words came to me and I went, what? But I wrote it and faithfully, and then I meditated and explored it. Rahu is a poisonous snake, feeding at the breast of the mother, who nourishes and treasures him, her changeling child. It doesn't say the, it says her changeling child. She made him.
That I think maybe we could leave it there, because that I want to get into next time when we talk about Rahu in the second and this need to devour.
That's it. That lovely, because that word nourish is in that sentence I just quoted.
Yeah, that's a good cue for the next one, and I think it would be a great topic to pick up next time with Rahu and that devouring nature.
I am enjoying these chats. It's fun, isn't it?
Yeah, real fun. It's fun, and for me, actually, more what I'm getting out of it more than anything is this: just that everything is okay, and that even in a contracted state, and even just when you use words like pulsations, it just, even the word itself eases it,
Yes. Because contraction is only half of it. When you talk about pulsation, it's like a heartbeat, and we are the heartbeat, and a pulsation, they can be strong or not, but contraction is only half of the story.
Yeah, and see, this is the thing with astrology, we're missing half of the story. You're telling the other half, and it's like, I haven't heard this until now. I've been studying for so long, but it's like we only hear of the contracted label of Rahu.
Yes.
This is like, and this is not just me. In astrology community, you're not going to hear what you're talking about. And it's just so needed right now because of this contracted state we're all in, when you think about it, as a globe with this, what's going on, right? We're just so focused on the contracted state.
But you are not just the contraction. So we may temporarily be part of the contraction. There's this one teacher years ago showed me this, that if you really tighten up your fist, it's very painful, but then you let go, where has it gone? It's this union of the opposites. I tell you, I really feel this is going to be really extraordinarily helpful exploring in this way. I love it, because when somebody who has some real desire and knowledge exchanges a conversation with me, more comes out in expression. I know it, and I'm in the process of embodying ever more what I know. But when I am able to speak it, the vibration, the frequency, it's bliss, because in the speaking, and this is really important for everybody listening now because it's helpful, when you speak truth, your ears, your neural pathways, the whole of you is sitting, listening. Oh, wow, like a little child that's got big ears listening. And when you speak it and know at the same time that you are speaking truth, it is a great gift. It's a pleasure. So the old idea of affirmations, dry affirmations, that you sit and you think, oh, they're not doing anything. You have to get to the state of inner silence, and you don't have to even experience it. You can intend it. You put your hand on your heart, maybe take a breath, feet on the ground. There's more to it than just that. I mean, you can expand it by connecting to the stars and the center of the earth, but just your hand on your heart and declare, I choose my true sovereignty. I choose whatever it is. I choose to always allow my mind to root in the heart. Whatever affirmations, but you have to fill them full of juice. And affirmations without juice are really a bit, well, mine says, no, you're not. No, you're not. So you have to find the way of allowing the juice of the heart frequency and embodying that by placing your hand on your heart. Just experiment. We'll talk more about it, won't we, Gary, over the...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I am, since we've started speaking, I you know, and since we've met, like, you know, I've been doing that more and more, and it's just been so helpful to me personally, you know, and to know that's always there, even if it's like, and I know myself, I have this impish quality that I want to play with it. I want to go away from it for a while. I want to experience the contraction, because it's safer to go further away from the home when you know it's there waiting for you.
Do you know what's come into my mind? Once, many years ago, I said, what on earth am I doing here? To my being. He said, you're bungee jumping. And that's what we're all doing, because we are all that little song of the divine child, so to speak. I mean, words don't express it if you only listen, but if you feel them as well, they carry the frequency, and they fill you. So that you are the little song that the divine child is singing to herself, himself, always at home in the heart, never able to leave, because it's all art in expression through various filters. And if you've got black glasses on, or grey, then it's going to look foggy. If you've got pink on, it's going to be, a bit unbalanced, because you only see, you know. So you have to have clear glasses to see that it really is fairyland at your choice. It can be really your choice. This world, which is a playground, a pleasure theatre, could absolutely be that way if we educated everybody from when they're little. The children know, but they know innately everything, our bodies, the world, circumstances, and we are, I sense, at a tipping point. A lot of people are gathering and they're awakening, but to anchor in this is the icing on the cake, so to speak, you know, to know, to really intend to know, I am sovereign of my life. I am the source, I am the experiencer, I am the enjoyer of the fruit that the wild horses didn't plant, that I am planting myself now, just by how you choose to see and feel and know it and embody it. That takes a little practice, though, because it's very distracting. The 10,000 things, as Lao Tzu calls it, or the Tower of Babel. No. Anyway,
as always,
not talk anymore.
As always, Kishori, it's been absolute pleasure, and we'll do this again next time. Rahu in the second house.
All right then.
So join us next time for Rahu in the second house, and until then, you can always check out Kishori online. Her website is called magicmakeover.com. That's magic with a K -makeover.com. And my own website here is timelineastrology.com. And if you'd like, you can go a bit deeper with the astrology with this and become a patron of Timeline Astrology and get daily reports as well as monthly forecasts and video horoscopes each month. So if you want to know how all of these transits of all the planets as well as Rahu are playing out in your life, join me on timelineastrology.com. Okay, thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to Rahu in the second. Until next time.